Whenever I'm working on animation assignments for class, I've found that I do my best work when I can listen to audio playing in the background. Because of this, I tend to watch a lot of video essays, especially ones about obscure media that I've never heard of. I'm sure that you all know what we're talking about by now. It can be an old game that nobody remembers, or a weird movie that you thought only existed in your mind. We all have our favorite guilty pleasures. While some of that media can age very poorly when you remove the rose-tinted glasses, there's also the chance that it holds up really well and might be even better than you remember. One of my favorite movies of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing, yet despite the fact that I always sing its praises as a must-see for horror fans, I hadn't actually sat down and watched it for a few years now. So, I grabbed two of my friends who hadn't seen it, and we all huddled together in the dorm room to watch it together. Needless to say, the movie was even more amazing than I remembered, even after all this time. All of the practical effects are so much fun, but the storytelling and character work really holds the movie up as a timeless classic. However, that's the thing. Get it? Get it? I said thing. Did you get it? But that's the thing. Everybody already knows how amazing that movie is, so there are already plenty of videos discussing the brilliance of it. There's nothing I could say that hasn't already been said. But what if I told you about a different movie? What if I told you about a movie that's much more obscure, something you've probably never heard of, and tell you why it's so great? Today, I'll be taking my top 5 favorite hidden gems and presenting them to you. All of these are films that I feel deserve much more love than they've received, especially some of the titles that I haven't seen people make videos about. We'll start the list with a cult classic, a hidden gem that more people seem to be aware of these days, and eventually end the list with a breathtaking visual novel experience. I'm aware that it's not a movie, but I watched it like one, so I've decided to include it anyway. These are just my personal opinions, of course, so don't crumble to ashes if I sing praises for a movie that you secretly despise. I just wanted an excuse to gush about some of my favorite films and encourage more people to watch them. With all of that being said, let's take a look at some of the best movies that you've probably never seen. The Last Unicorn is an animated film that came out on November 19th, 1982. The film was made by Rankin Bass Productions, who you probably know from all of their Christmas specials, all the creepy stop-motion stuff, especially like Rudolph and The Miser Brothers. The Miser Brothers was my personal favorite, but yeah, they made all of those movies. They also, one of their other cel-animated films was Frosty the Snowman. They made all of the Christmas classics that we know today. This movie was one of their few cel animation projects. The film is about a unicorn who, upon learning that she is the last of her species on Earth, goes on a quest to find out what has happened to others of her kind. Based on the 1968 novel The Last Unicorn, written by Peter S. Beagle, who also wrote the film's screenplay. I've done a little bit of research for the behind-the-scenes aspects of this film, and I found out that the original author, Beagle, actually was very involved in the filmmaking of the animated adaptation. He had full control over the screenplay for the most part, and he was aware that the film would differ from the original book, but he still had a large amount of creative control over what those differences would be and how it would play out. The film has a very anime-esque appearance because it was outsourced to an animation studio that does a lot of work on anime, obviously. I think it's really cool. I think it's a really cool project. I just wanted a chance to ramble about it for a bit because, honestly, I never really get to just sit down and go off script and talk about this sort of stuff. The Last Unicorn is a movie that I rewatched recently, and I think that's partly what inspired this video, aside from also rewatching The Thing. As an animation major, I totally recognize the craftsmanship and skill behind this movie, and that being said, I think a lot of the movie is animated on 2s, and that's why at the time when it came out, reviews were like, the unicorn moves weird. It's animated on 2s. It looks fine. In fact, it looks really fucking good. The animation is a highlight. I rewatch the movie sometimes as background noise just to watch the animation play out. It's absolutely beautiful. The film opens up in the unicorn's forest, and the unicorn doesn't have a name, so we just call her Unicorn, or the Unicorn. There's only one of them, after all. At least now we know there's only one of them, because two huntsmen are going through the woods, and they're talking to each other, and eventually they talk about unicorns, and the one guy's like, do you think we're gonna see any? And the other guy goes, nuh-uh, there aren't any left. If there's a unicorn out here, listen now, because you are the last. And then as they leave, the unicorn enters and is like, last? I'm me, the last unicorn? and we get that funny title drop, but no, she realizes she's the last of her kind, so she decides to go out on an adventure to find out what happened to all of the other unicorns. Where did all of her sisters go? All of these other immortal, magical creatures. And so while she's searching the world, she runs into some funny side characters and overcomes a lot of obstacles. It's like a road trip fantasy story, but for some reason, when you look it up on like Wikipedia and IMDb, the movie is also listed as a musical. It is not. To clarify, it is not a musical until you get to the third act, I think. There's like one song that they play a few times, and then they have musical numbers in the final third of the movie, which I will admit, it does throw you out of it a little bit. It's weird. Aside from just like looking beautiful, honestly, like this movie is just really good. I think that the character work, despite being different from the novel, like some of the characters are very clearly skewed a bit for the animated adaptation, although this is definitely not a children's movie by any means because of all the mature themes involved. I really like the character work, and I like how they bounce off of each other. The unicorn is written as a character who, she experiences emotions, but she experiences them differently than humans do because she's immortal, so there are some things that she's just bound to not understand because she experiences life differently. She will not die. And then there's also Schmendrick, I believe is the name of the funny wizard guy I enjoy. He's animated juggling wrong, and that's a random fun fact I know for some reason. Schmendrick is a very terrible magician, and he's bad at magic, but he's so cute and he's so nice, and he's very humble and like kind about it too. He's like, "My lady, you deserve the work of a high-class magician, but you'll have to accept the help of a second-rate locksmith because he can't break the lock on a cage and just has to fucking kneel down and pick the lock because his magic is shit." It's just cute. The characters are fun. Molly, I believe, is the third character that joins their party, and then, of course, Prince Lear, but he's later, so I'm not going to get into spoilers for any of these plot summaries. I'm just trying to convince you to watch these movies, so that's why all of these summaries are going to sound very vague and kind of like I'm just rambling. Because I am just rambling. I'm just telling you, here are 5 movies I think you should watch. Everyone kind of knows The Last Unicorn, so there isn't really much more for me to get into. I will say, though, it's definitely worth your time, even if you already know what it is. All of the characters in the movie are very obsessed with themselves and their legacy, all except for... Actually, no, even including the unicorn, I'd say, because she does not experience emotions like regret. Like, she knows sadness, but not in the way that humanity knows it. She speaks in ways that make me want to start writing poetry. The unicorn is worried about the legacy of herself and her fellow unicorns and what it means if she's the last one. Schmendrick is worried about his legacy as being a powerful magician, although not as much as the antagonist characters they come across on the journey. Schmendrick is much more humble and fucking reasonable as a person. Meanwhile, there are these crazy bandits they come across, and the guy who runs the bandit group is obsessed with his legacy. He wants to go down in history and live on after he's dead. He wants his story to live on in the form of like urban legends and fairy tales that people tell each other, like the story of Robin Hood, which does play into the plot of the film. And then there's also a crazy lady who keeps a bunch of magical beasts captured, and she knows that keeping a harpy or keeping a unicorn captured will kill her, but she knows that they will remember that she's the one who trapped them, because these immortal creatures will continue to live forever long after she's dead, and they will forever remember that she was the one who trapped them. So that's, in her words, there's my immortality. So every character in the film, it's just written so well. It's so good. Also, I stan Prince Lear because not enough people stan Prince Lear. I love him. He slays. He quite literally slays in the movie. I love him. Enough about the unicorn movie. Moving on now.
Let's fly to the castle.
Speaking of unicorns, though, you all know that I'm a big fan of My Little Pony, so I just wanted to quickly announce that I've begun writing a fan fiction. You all asked for it, yes you did, and I finally had time to deliver on that request. This fanfic is also a reboot, technically speaking, since it's my way of reviving Echoes of Unity, which I stopped writing because G5 of MLP completely shredded the lore I wrote about alicorns. I had to scrap the original version of the story if I wanted to stay semi-canon to the show, which I do, but that meant Opaline needed to be replaced, because her backstory in canon is not only god-awful, but it's completely different than what I wrote. Thus, I made Celestia's son, Prince Sonder, take the role of Opaline in the story, and I also shoved Oberon into the AU because he's basically my second pony Sona at this point. If you're disappointed that I'm not writing icing on the cake, don't worry, I'll be sure to give my girl Minky a fun cameo in the story too. Anyways, go check it out. The fanfiction is called My Little Pony Eclipse of Destiny. You can read it on AO3, and I'll make Instagram posts whenever the story updates. Hot Rod, we are finally talking about the movie Hot Rod. It came out on August 3rd, 2007. It was made, well, at least it was directed by Akiva Schaffer. I butchered that name, so sorry, and it was distributed by Paramount Pictures. This is a movie that I've already tried to talk about in a previous video, but every time I used footage, no matter how I edited the video or how much I obscured it and blurred it and shielded it from the copyright readers, I still got like kicked into the shadow realm, so I just couldn't upload it. So let's hope I find a way to make this video visually interesting without getting it banned around the world, because I'm going to talk about Hot Rod. Nobody can fucking stop me. For Rod Kimball, performing stunts is a way of life, even though he is rather accident-prone. Poor Rod can't even get any respect from his stepfather, who beats him in weekly sparring matches. When Frank falls ill, Rod devises his most outrageous stunt yet to raise money for Frank's operation, and then Rod will kick Frank's ass. The IMDb page said butt. He says ass throughout the entire movie. I'm gonna kick your ass. This movie is hands down the funniest movie I've ever fucking seen in my entire life. I rewatch this religiously at least once a year. This is my family's movie. This is our movie. We memorized every scene of the movie. We know all the quotes. We say them to each other like they're internet memes or vines that everyone just knows, but then nobody knows what the fuck we're talking about. So if you want to know what the fuck I'm talking about when I say some random shit like, babe, no, babe, wait, babe, no, babe, wait, come on, babe. So if you want to know what that was, or literally any other quote from this movie, you should just watch the fucking movie, because it is so funny. The movie is presented as the journey of the wannabe stuntman, Rod Kimball, who is trying to raise money for his stepfather, Frank, who needs a heart transplant. He needs like an operation. So he's going to jump 15 buses, which is one more than Evel Knievel jumped. And we know it is, because he checked online. It is just surreal. The movie is very surreal. It probably predicted a lot of Gen Z humor. Like, this movie came out in 2007, but it feels like it was made by a bunch of YouTubers today, or like even people just making TikTok videos that are stitched together. Like, it's very scene to scene to scene. It's very random. It feels like a playlist of YouTube videos that were just stitched together, and I mean that in the best way possible. This movie is fucking funny. Like, some of the physical comedy alone, I feel like the stunt doubles, I'm shocked they didn't die. Like, it's so funny, holy shit. There's a scene in the movie where he falls down a mountain for like 2 straight fucking minutes, and they just play it straight. Like, it's just repeatedly shots of him falling down the same hill, like, just because it keeps going. It's like the hill just goes for fucking ever, and it's so funny. Oh my god. I can't even say anything else about it, because then I'd just be listing all of the jokes like that, but I can't do that. So you should just go watch it. It's really funny. This is probably the most normal movie on this list, but it's definitely one that you should watch. A Monster in Paris is my comfort, guilty pleasure, yummy, cozy movie. I watch this all the time, and none of my friends have seen it, so I always sit them down and make them watch it the same way I make them watch Hot Rod. This is an animated film. It was released October 12th, 2011. It was directed by Bibo Bergersen, I think. I'm sorry, I'm never gonna get anyone's name right ever. But he also did work on The Road to El Dorado, which is a great sign. I mean, he also worked on Shark Tale, but we can ignore that. We will look past that for now. And this movie was loosely inspired by Phantom of the Opera, which is my favorite musical. one of them. I also really like Frankenstein the musical and like multiple others, and Epic the musical, but Phantom of the Opera is one of the OGs. This movie's summary that I found online doesn't do it justice because it just says, Raoul and Emile accidentally release a monster from an eccentric scientist's greenhouse and vow to track it down. They soon realize that the beast may not be as menacing as it appears and try to save it from a corrupt police chief. Like, is that the plot? Yeah. Is that a shit summary? Also, yeah. This movie's fucking banger. First of all, the monster, Francoeur, or Francoeur, however you pronounce it, he is my baby, my son. Whenever someone's like, that's my little Scrinklo, they're talking about Francoeur. They are not talking about anyone else. I am only talking about Francoeur. I love him. He is my everything. He inspires so many of my character designs, like even in Welcome to Dreamworld when I'm like, man, what should I do for this character design? I find myself looking over to this movie and I'm like, write that down, write that down. It's just so pretty. Like, I know the animation's dated, and I really wish that they could have had the budget to do a 2D film. They didn't, so they did a CG movie instead. But, oh my fucking god, the concept art, it's beautiful. Look at this. You don't want to eat that? I want to eat that. If you don't want to eat that, fucking hand it over. I want to eat it. Give it to me, and I will take it. It is beautiful. The way they use colors during the sequences of this movie, specifically the music sequences, breathtaking. Like, especially the La Seine scene in the movie where they're singing together on stage. The music and the colors, oh, it's beautiful. I fucking love it. But this movie actually shines most with the characters and the attention to detail that they put into the fucking plot. Like, for such a straightforward movie, everything is tied together perfectly. There are no loose ends. There are no loose ends, ever. They even give you a really kind of shitty post-credits scene to explain the backstories of characters because they realized they didn't put it in the movie, so they still give it to you. They didn't even need to fucking do that. They didn't need to explain how the potions made the monster. They didn't need to explain how the specific potions have different effects. Like, this is why he can sing, but he can't talk. This is how it grows. Like, okay, the second one, obviously not as impressive, but like, it's small, really stupid details that you'd think are just common sense. But I've watched so many bad movies in the last few years that I'm just so grateful for movies where they plan out every fucking thing. In this movie, everything happens for a reason. There is nothing that happens that doesn't come back later. If someone drops, Emile runs, he works in a movie theater and he has a projector and he has projection reel and he puts it in his pocket and then at one point it falls out of his pocket. That's not just a fucking visual thing that plays into the plot later. There's part where Raoul is like looking around the scientist's shit and like pockets something. That comes back like almost an hour later. Like, Chekhov's gun wishes he was a monster in Paris. Also, just, it's really cute. It's really wholesome. Lucille is the woman ever, and I love her being like a protective older sister of the monster, Francoeur, who, his song is really good. Like, La Seine is really good too, but A Monster in Paris, like the song that is the same name as the movie, you get it. That song is so fucking good, and if you're not gonna watch this movie because you're a little baby bitch that's scared of emotions and emotional vulnerability, you should still listen to A Monster in Paris, like the song. Like, it's good. Sean Lennon, I think, is the voice of Francoeur. His voice is really cute. It fits Francoeur really well. All of the characters are cute. It's also funny. It's a really funny movie. My favorite quote from the movie, I will give it to you now, and if this quote alone doesn't convince you, I have no hope for you. Women want me, men want to be me, women want to be with the men who want to be me, the women want to be the men who want to be. I'm popular and creative. That is iconic. That is fucking iconic. How have you not quoted that or turned that into a gif? Like, watch the movie. Go watch the fucking movie and tell me about how beautiful it was so we can all make Francoeur fan art and hold him in our hands. Dave Made a Maze was released on August 18th, 2017. It was directed by Bill Watterson. Dave, a frustrated artist who has yet to accomplish anything significant in his career, builds a fort out of cardboard boxes in his living room, only to wind up trapped by the fantastical pitfalls and critters of his own creation. Ignoring his warnings, Dave's girlfriend, Annie, leads a band of oddball explorers on a rescue mission. Upon entry, they find themselves in an ever-changing supernatural world, threatened by booby traps and pursued by a bloodthirsty minotaur. If you like shit that's really fucking weird, if you like stuff like Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, that new show that just came out, The Amazing Digital Circus, what are other like weird reality bending things? Like, not The Twilight Zone, because that's played straight. This is like a comedy. There are some really good, like, there is a mature moment, and it's really artsy in the way it presents its themes. Like, it has mature themes about how Dave is frustrated that he hasn't accomplished anything, and he feels like he's never going anywhere in life, and he's burnt out, he's dug himself into a rut, and he feels like he's just doing the same song and dance over and over and over. And then his girlfriend, like, feels like he's holding her back, and she's also just doing the same cycle over and over again, and both of them are stuck. The way that is portrayed throughout the maze, the character work, and this one scene where they just play the same conversation, like I think 3 different times, but they slightly tweak it in each variation of the scene. It's beautiful. Like, that is art house shit. Why is it in this funny cardboard box movie? It's really good, and it's also really weird and funny. Like, if you like Gravity Falls, I guess, is another thing I can think of off the top of my little noggin, you will really like this. If you like weird shit, psychological horror comedies, you will like this. It's like, there's some gore, but it's not really gore because everything's made out of like cardboard and paper, and the set design, oh moi. I don't usually like live action movies as much as I like animated movies because I'm an animation major, so I'm a square, I'm a nerd. But the set design in this movie and all of the practical effects, I can barely remember any digital effects being used. It's all practical, and they build these elaborate sets. It's fucking brilliant. I love it. There's a scene where they're like in a ball pit of like paper origami thing, and then the paper cranes start coming to life and are like pecking at them. There's a scene where there's a giant mouth, like of a giant face on the wall made of cardboard, because they're in like a cardboard Indiana Jones temple. Like, even the Minotaur is fucking made of cardboard and shit. Like, and it like runs after them like it's just a man with a cardboard head. It's so fucking cool. I love this movie. I need to rewatch it for like inspiration sometime. But yeah, you should check it out. Last but certainly not least is South Scrimshaw, which actually came out on June 9th of 2023, this fucking year. It was made by Nathan O. Marsh, who is a content creator and artist. He made South Scrimshaw as a visual novel, and it is the story of a newborn whale on a vast alien ocean. It is a richly illustrated experimental visual novel written in the style of a nature documentary. And I didn't even know it was a fucking game at first, because I just found a video of it, like a playthrough without any commentary, and I watched that. It felt like I was watching a real documentary. I like laid down in bed and I got all cozied up. I got like a little drink and I'm like watching it for like over an hour. It feels like you're watching an actual documentary, but it's like so good. If you ever want to get invested in something that's like not very story driven, but you just want to immerse yourself, like, people like the movie Avatar, the one with the blue people. They don't like the story because it's dog shit, but they like Avatar because the world building is fucking incredible. The world that they made for that movie, like Pandora, people like Pandora. They don't give a shit about the stupid story. The story sucks. South Scrimshaw has the amazing world building of something like Pandora, but it actually has a not god-awful story to back it up. Like, we follow this whale, and it feels like the nature documentary, it's following the animal along, and, like, we follow him and his mom, and, like, the pod that they travel in, the coral reef they go to. Every single fucking thing has, like, in-universe lore and world building. Like, oh, the coral reef, here's an entire a segment dedicated to explaining how the coral reef builds itself up into spirals and like how it works and how it dies. Here's an entire segment about how there's a parasitic, like symbiote almost relationship between whales and like other things that latch onto them, and how the whales on this alien planet need to pick what they're going to host. Like, if you want to host plants, rocks, like animals, like what's going to live on the whale, essentially. Like reefbacks almost from Subnautica. Oh my god, and there are like tiny little fucking animals. Like, you'll see like someone will mention something funny, like, oh, it's like a sea bunny. And then there's like a 10-minute explanation for what a sea bunny is, and it's unironically one of my favorite parts of the entire documentary. It's so fun and interesting. It's like, you don't need to go that in depth at a throwaway joke or like a throwaway line. Like, you could have just said, oh, that's just a funny thing that scientists made up to tease each other. But instead, you go back and you're like, okay, so in the beginning, when we first started landing on this planet, and then you fucking like lay it out. It's so good. It's so fucking good. I love world building and I love lore stuff. If you like world building and you like lore, watch it or play it. Even better, play the game, support the creator. I want there to be a part 2. I need part 2 or I will explode. In conclusion, I don't have one. I don't have a conclusion. This was just an excuse to make you watch some of my favorite movies. I hope you enjoyed this video though, and comment down below what you thought about each of these movies. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I hope you have an elegant evening, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye!